Hello and welcome to this edition of Wednesday Palaver. Today we're going to be doing something pretty interesting. We're going to be talking about elections, we're going to be talking about pollsters, we're going to be talking about outlook for the 2024 elections. And we are particularly privileged to have with us our own brother and good friend Musa Dankwa, who is the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. Now, since 1992, I've been following the polls, and it seems to me that the polls which comes close to anything, only one, and those are the surveys that are being carried out by Global Info Analytics. And I do hope that this Wednesday, he will give us an insight into what is happening and what is likely to happen and so on. I just like to leave the microphone to him so that he can do his own thing. Of course, we've only recently concluded the primaries of the New Patriotic Party. The primaries of the NDC have been concluded. Some parties have not moved at all. They are still in deep slumber. They are snoring and nothing can wake them up. Well, it's nobody's fault if they cannot be waking up and so on. So this evening or this afternoon, we are going to be looking at election 2024. What are the chances of individuals? What are the chances of political parties? What are the issues involved in the choices we make for 2024? And we're going to be doing something very simple as we always do. He's going to have 20-25 minutes to talk to us, and thereafter we in the studio are going to ask questions and make comments, and then we're going to go to the social media platforms, and then we come back to him for his closing remarks. So my pleasure in welcoming to the microphone our own brother and friend Musa Dankwa, Executive Director of Global Info Analytics.
Thank you very much for having me this afternoon. It's my pleasure to be hosted here this afternoon to discuss polls and elections in Ghana and the outlook for 2024. And I'm quite excited as a watcher of polls myself for many years. I've sat from far, observed polls elsewhere and saw how they've done it elsewhere scientifically and how the polls have been used to guide everything we do or they do as a country. Indeed, I have never seen, I don't know, but those who have come before me, any polls in this country being carried out consistently over a period of time with the sole aim of truly bringing out what the voters think about the country and their voting intentions. Over the years, I think polls have come in once a while, very close to the elections, and most don't have trend analysis to see where we were before and where we are now. And us deciding to join this fray as Global Info Analytics was primarily driven by the fact that the market was looking for something like that. There was nobody that was doing this. That doesn't mean that there are not companies that can do it, but I think they are scared. Opinion polls in this country, you have to be brave to do it. You have to be honest in doing it. You shouldn't have skeletons in your cupboards if you want to do it, because you will be subject to blackmail, no doubt about that. But once you know you are honest, sincere, and very brave professional, I think you will survive it. And we are quite happy that we charted this course and serving the Ghanaian public and also the business community and to some extent the international business community. In recent times, we've seen companies or entities like Fitch Solutions having to rely on our work for their outlook. Not only Fitch Solution, we've had inquiries from European companies who are into research, who have in the past have to rely on opinion of few political experts to be able to gauge the political temperature and what is happening. Now they don't have to do that anymore. They have data from us constantly every 90 days that they can fault onto to see what is happening. And we are quite pleased that we are probably the only one that put out our methodology openly for scrutiny. That's the level of transparency we have gone to achieve that kind of openness and trustworthiness. We are also the only one who put our questionnaires ahead of the timing of the polls. We publish them so that we can see the question we are going to ask before we go to the polls, and we ask them. And one important thing I think I have really come to value the role of opinion poll is that it enables people to manage their expectations. Once you know what is happening, I think the temperature in the country will be leveled. The level of uncertainty is reduced, because if you're opposition party and you are losing, you know you are losing. You don't, as a commander in the field, you have to rally your troops and say, look, we can change this course. That is fine. That's what polls are meant for. You could change the tie in your favor if you do certain things that the voters want you to do. And again, if you are a ruling party and things are not going well, you know what to do, because the poll tells you exactly what the issues are. So we are happy we are helping both the opposition and the ruling party to see what is happening, and then they can respond appropriately. It is not in our interest to portray anybody in a good light or bad light. We are saying it as it is, without blemishing the figures, without sugarcoating anything. And I think that's one of the things that we tend to do very well. It may be unpalatable in some instances, but we have no other ways of putting it, just to say it as it is. Even when everybody is against that conclusion, we stick by it because it's come from the data. Having said that, I will probably start with the MPP primaries and the implications for the next election in terms of parliamentary arithmetics, and I will look at the general election itself. We also, about 28 MPP MPs lose their seat or their chance to come back to parliament or to contest again in the next election. For many of them, this didn't come to us as a surprise, because we've had them on our radar for some time during our 24 months polling that we've been doing across the country. One way or the other, if we have been to that constituency, we would have definitely picked up a signal that something was going there. A lot of them ignore it because probably they think Global Info is a paid poster who is doing somebody's job, but absolutely not. And anybody that we flagged to be in danger, real danger, actually lost his election. So it is not in your own interest to ignore the polls that we publish. It's the facts, the truth, nothing but the truth. If you look at what happened, it simply means that the MPP delegates were listening to their general voters in their constituencies. Because if the voters were concerned about the MP's performance and their performance rating was not anything to go home by, then certainly, as a delegate, you are supposed to listen to your people and represent their views when you are making decisions. Yes, there are court allegations of money changing hands, but I believe at the end of the day, they voted with their conscience because they wanted the best for their party as far as the candidates are concerned. They want to put their best foot forward, and I think they have done that. I mean, for me, that is something we should appreciate. As believers of democratic principles, we have chosen this path of democracy, even though we have our own shortcomings. I think the delegates did the right thing by voting the way they did. I know some of the MPs will cry foul, resources and here and there, but none of the MPs who lost was surprising to us in the sense that the signals were there. What does it mean? Now, before these primaries, we have been gathering data about parliamentary voting intentions. We asked voters which party's candidate do they intend to vote for in the next election. And people were wondering, why are we gathering this data? Obviously, NDC had gotten their candidates lined up already. So when we speak to voters, probably for NDC, there are no issues. You will see that they are clear as to who is contesting for the NDC, so know their candidates. But for the MPP, they hadn't done their primaries. So people were saying that that question is not really important. But we wanted to know if they maintain those MPs, what would the numbers look like? And if those MPs were changed, what would those numbers look like? Between October 2023 and November 2023, we have seen a sharp decline in voters who want to vote for MPP's parliamentary candidates, from 36% to around 31%, generally across the country. And NDC moving from 48% to 52% within the same polling period. So this is a very useful data that we have. So 52 minus 31 is a huge gap between the voting intentions for parliamentary seats. Now that they have elected their candidates, when we go back to the field in April, we should expect some movement in these numbers. If they've taken the right decisions, we will see the tightening of the gap. Because at the time they were telling us who they intend to vote for, maybe some of them felt that this MP will still be there. Now that those MPs have been removed, will they still line up and vote for MPP in the parliamentary elections? That will be a very good test to see the impact of this decision that the MPs, the delegates have taken. And my gut feeling is that the gap will tighten because of that decision. I may want to single out certain constituencies for specific references. And I'll start with Domi Kwabenya. Over the past 24 months of polling, the signals were clear that the incumbent MP was going to lose her seat. We have been to Domi Kwabenya in the normal polling thrice or so, and then we've done special polling in Domi Kwabenya twice. So we have the numbers as far back as last year, I think August or so. So we knew the numbers that was going to come from Domi Kwabenya, and we knew she wasn't going to survive, and she fell. Another seat we're looking at was Amasaman. It wasn't surprising to us because we knew he was on the rope in the constituency, and if that is the case, we expect the delegate to have that feeling and respond, and they did respond. And then Trobu for us, the outcome wasn't shocking, but we didn't think the candidate that contested was big enough to shoot down the incumbent MP, because Trobu is a very strong MPP, very, very strong. And we believe that if MPP had a good candidate, they could retain that seat. The last poll we did in Trobu, in fact, the signs were very clear for the MP. When we asked voters who they would like to represent MPP in the constituency, about 27% said Moses Enim, and 49% said somebody else. But there was no name at the time who was going to contest him. But people were saying that anybody but him. So that was a clear sign that this MP may not survive. Even if he did in the primaries, in the general election, he could be in trouble. And luckily for us, in the same poll, then we had NDC candidate there, is it Dr. Ham? We pegged him against Moses Zanim in a hypothetical scenario that if there was election, here today, and the candidates are Moses Zenim and the NDC candidate, who would you vote for? And surprising to us, the NDC was around 52% in Trobu. And that was shocking to us, because for Trobu to 10 like that in a poll, it's worrying. So the signs were there in most of these cases. But I believe that from polling perspective, the removal of some of these MPs gives the MPP a better chance to defend those seats, because they will have a better candidates for these elections compared to those who were occupying the seat. And again, if you look at the margins that these MPs won from the last election, a lot of them are on the swing of less than 0.5%. I mean, very, very slim margins. And I think one of the slimmest swing in this country today is I think Ebura Esebu Kwamenkesi. The swing required for that constituency to flip is less than 0.15%. So we did a ranking of those seats among the 28 that changed hands last week, and we saw the vulnerability of the MPs across those 28 places. The only places that they have comfortable lead or swing are those areas in the Ashanti region. Almost all the seats in the Ashanti region that we polled, they were quite okay, with the exception of Insunof, where I think last election the margin was not very comfortable. And also in recent times, we've seen Chuma will be I think north or so. That one too, the polling looks a bit unusual. It could be an outlier, but it's a warning that MPP must watch. Now, what do we expect in the parliamentary numbers? Our model still suggests that NDC will be the majority in parliament as we speak. Now, if the numbers change, we'll come back and tell you. I mean, this is a tracking data we are keeping. We're not gonna say somebody is leading when he's not. I mean, we've seen, you've seen us put out polls that put NDC under threat. We've done one for Medina, and it became a big issue. And the attack on us was quite ferocious. But I mean, we are used to that. Why Medina in particular? Medina poll prompted us to go back, because in the, I think, July tracking poll, we did a electoral area that is predominantly MPP electoral area, and then the poll numbers showed that the party affiliation there, about 70% were MPP, and NDC was around 30% thereabout. But then who they intend to vote for in the presidential, John Mahama was close to 70% within that electoral area. But then the incumbent MP was way below, I think, 22%. And that was a sign that something wasn't going right. So we decided to go back and deploy much larger samples in 9 of the electoral areas to see what is happening. And we saw that there was no, there was trouble in Medina for NDC. And for us, I mean, that's our job. We don't care who the access fall on. I mean, the data speaks for itself. And I think from that onwards, they've been trying to do some work there. Good luck, but the figures are there for now. So we expect NDC to be a majority in parliament as we speak. And where would those seats come from? We expect some movement in the northern region. NPP has a number of seats in the last election from the northern region. We expect few of them probably to flip this time around, you know, because of the situation. The biggest switches or swings will come from the Greater Accra here. The polling numbers are not very good for the incumbent government in Greater Accra. That's a fact. Why? Probably because the economic crisis has hit Accra more than any other region, to the extent that some constituencies that you feel must be safe for MPP are now looking very shaky. And as pollsters, we're going to keep our eye on few of them, and that will give us a bit of barometer of what's going to happen. This morning we were discussing what we're going to be looking at, or which constituency we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at Domi Kwabinya quite seriously. Anya Soutrum, we look at Botiano English and Manfrum. We will look at Trubu, look at Tema Central, Ablikuma West. Yes, so if we see what is happening there, we can tell what's going to happen elsewhere. And we're devising a model that will enable us replicate some of this to other constituencies, other adjoining or neighboring constituencies, without actually doing polls there. We can look at the demography of that area and map it up to other constituencies and see if they are similar in character or nature. Then we can conclude what might be happening there, because we don't have the resources to go everywhere. So we expect that to NDC to be the majority in parliament. Now the presidential elections, where I think everybody is having an interest in. But it's also very important that you have the numbers in parliament to support a president. The polling has been very interesting, as November elections that MPP went to elect the flag bearer has given us a better insight of what is happening in the race. We remember Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia won by 61.4 or so percent. Before the elections, we have predicted 58.4 plus or minus 1.92% margin of error. So our predictions was around 61% for him. And I remember all the attacks we got. And we were quite steadfast in what we said, because we believed in our numbers. I believe in the calls that we made, over 4,400 calls across the 245 constituencies in this country, randomly. We didn't look at your face and called you. The machine just picked a number when we spoke. So we were quite confident in our numbers. And also, we did the poll at least 2 clear weeks before the elections. I think that's a lesson that we have learned. When it comes to parliamentary or internal elections, when you do the polls very close to the event, you get misled. People then feel the pressure. People are there, delegate chasing them up and enticing them. So when you call them, they are a bit uneasy. They think, oh, are they the guys who are coming to give me the money, or this, or they will be cagey? So even though we had a lot of people who said undecided, but we had enough sample to be able to conclude what is going to happen. I think going forward in the future, there's a lesson that we have learned, that we will do our polls at least 3 or 4, 1 month before the actual elections. But at that point, there was no pressure, and the guys will be honest to tell you their views. And then we are here. What has happened in between? The October poll that we did before the MPP primaries had John Mahama on 48% roughly. And then Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was around 28%, thereabout. And Alan was around 11%. And the rest followed. And between October and November, when Dr. Bawumia was elected, we have seen movement in the polling numbers. John Mahama is now on 53.2%. He's gone up almost 4.9%, 5%, compared to his last number, his polling numbers in October. And Dr. Bawumia has gone up as well, 1.9% from around 28%. So he's close to around 30% roughly, 29.6. Alan slightly dropped in the November or the December poll, and we'll tell you why, to around 7.4%, and the rest follows. And we have a chunk that were for someone else or undecided. Now, what has happened is that after the election of Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, we've seen the MPP rallying behind him to some extent. So his numbers went up, because that time they knew there was no longer Alan Kennedy in the race. So those who were not sure were saying someone else, or I don't know, firmed up their mind. Now that we have him, do you want to vote for him? Yes, we'll vote for him. So that went up by 1.9%. So he had a bump of 1.9%. But Don Mahama had a higher bump, nearly 5%. Why? And where did those numbers come from? We have seen a pattern that we want to follow going forward. that voters who were MPP are now voting more for Mahama than they used to. I remember, I think October, around 12% or so of MPP voters were voting for Mahama in the October poll. That number has gone up to around 18 to 19% in the December poll, which means that there are people who are in MPP who actually don't want Bawumia to win. That is a fact from the data. If you look at the party affiliation of these people who want to vote for Mahama, Bawumia, or Alan, for NDC, about 95% of their voters are still going to vote for John Mahama. And 3% of them intend to vote for Bawumia. Yes, they are NDC, but will vote for MPP's candidates. It's natural. And then 1% of them want to vote for Alan Afafranto. And then another 1% said they were undecided. Now, when you come to MPP, among likely voters of MPP, 68% intend to vote for Dr. Bawumia, 68%, compared to 95% for Mahama. That's a huge deficit in a base support, and that's a problem Bawumia has. And then you have some 18% of his supporters are voting for Mahama, and another 12% or 11% are voting for Alan Chiramatin. So the reason why Bawumia is not pulling the numbers that he should be pulling now, regardless of the situation in the country or in the economy, is because of the fragmentation of MPP base. He is not able to get MPP solidly behind him at the moment. And Afafranto coming out from his part of the party means that he will probably has lost that group permanently for this election. Those who are for Alan, but they're MPP guys, would vote for Alan. That's denying Bawumia that chunk of voters who should have voted for him if Alan was not going independent. And then you have MPP who are also voting for Mahama. Now, the huge number of MPP who are voting for Mahama at the moment is coming from the Ashanti region, and that is the most worrying. For the first time in any poll that we have done, Mahama is leading in opinion polls in Ashanti region. That has never happened in any of our poll. It may not happen because sometimes people are angry and they want to express their views in a different way, but on the actual day they will rationalize. But it shows that even if they rationalize, there are some that will not come back, and those are the worrying group that they should be really be watching out for. And what we believe is happening is that there are people, and that's our hypothesis. Why has suddenly Ashanti region been moving towards Mahama? That's the question we need to find out. But we have a theory that we want to explore and find out. We believe that there were those who were no vote guys. These guys want Kennedy at the point to come back as an MPP flag bearer in the future. And if Bawumia wins the presidency, that will be the dream for Kennedy gone. It won't happen. Right? So you are now seeing people who are pro-Ken, who are voting for Mahama, not because they like him, because they have an agenda. That's a human being, yes. And then also, there are those who like Alan. They may want to vote for Alan, but they fear that Alan may not get the enough vote to win, and thereby making Bawumia competitive in the race. And so to avoid making Bawumia a competitive candidate in the election, they would rather take their vote to Mahama to ensure that Bawumia is defeated. That's what the polling numbers are suggesting. We are going to ask certain questions in the next time so that we can triangulate to be able to see whether what our theory is correct or not, by asking them about who they had intended to vote for if in the MPP primaries. So we can see those who said Kennedy, we'll see how they are voting. And that will give us a proof from data that yes, these guys are the ones causing the problem for MPP. Yes, I mean that data will be there, and I mean, and if you are MPP and you have this data, then you know what to do. If you have to go and beg Kennedy to join a campaign, then you have to do so, because the numbers suggest that if his guys don't vote for your candidate, then you are in trouble. So the data will help everybody, MPP and NDC, and we don't care who it benefits, so long as it buttresses our theory and our hypothesis, and we're able to prove that through data, we are quite happy with that. Now, what is the implication of those additional candidates who are coming in? Nana Kwame Bediako has come into the race. Cheddar, a young guy who some of the young guys are looking up to and thinking that this guy is the dream. What does that mean for the traditional parties? I'm not sure he's going to be able to set up his machinery nationwide to have a political party. I suspect he may try it to be as a movement. I've heard he's applied for licenses and he has not been even responded to. So I don't know whether he's going to get his license. But these guys are threats. Nobody should underestimate the power of these young guys. If you do so, you do so at your own peril. But there is one thing that I think we have to understand. Is the formidable and the unity that NDC seem to show this time around. And that it doesn't matter what happens in the other field, they still remain united at 95%. The least support we've had for John Mahama among his people was 92%. And that number has edged up to 95%. I think the more confident they feel they can win the election, they will realign. And for MPP, that's their problem they have to have. I mean, they have to deal with. How do we keep our base together? How do we prevent MPP supporters from going to other places because they are not comfortable with what we have? And that's going to be their biggest problem. Now, we suspect that Nana Kwame Bediako would have impact on MPP numbers. Yes. Cheddar will have impact on MPP numbers more than the NDC. And we also suspect that he's going to take a chunk of the youth vote, 18 to 35 years old guys, maybe looking at for Cheddar. So if you're in a political party, this is a message for you to watch. But then above all, what are the issues that will be driving voters to the polls and helping them to make decisions as to who they want to vote for? We've been asking some questions regularly, which is what are the key issues that will matter to you as a voter when you go to cast your vote. Number one issues has been jobs. Two, economy. And then you have education. And then corruption as four. And then fifth item is roads, bad roads. Now, we have seen in the last poll, corruption sliding down to fifth, and then roads taking over from corruption. And that's a serious issue, because if roads become a big issue for elections, with the government not having the money to do the roads, that could really be a problem for the ruling government in 2024. So we ask voters, who do you trust? Because to vote for someone, you must have trusted the person to address your needs or your concerns or your fears, your aspirations. Now, if you ask voters, who do you trust to better manage education, over 53% of them will say John Mahama. Baumia around 26-27%. They're about along that the same his polling numbers. If you ask them, who do you trust on the economy, it is still Mahama on 54%. If you ask them, who do you trust on creating jobs, it is still Mahama on 53% of 2%. He is in the 50s on all the key issues, including fighting corruption, where I think it's about 50%. That is lowest performance in terms of on those four issues. Now, for anyone to win the elections, people should first trust you on these issues. So forget about who they would vote for. You will get the hint by who they trust on those issues. We can decide not to go and ask them who they want to vote for, but ask them who do they trust on these four issues. And you can see how they were going to vote. That's why Mahama is on 53 point, I think 2% or 0.4%, and the average score for him on these top issues is the same as his polling numbers. If the numbers do not correlate, you will see it there. And they perform differently on these measures. When it comes to education, Bamia does better on education than any of the other issues because of free education that the MPP is associated with. So they tend to give them credit for that. So you get some benefit. But I think the problem with free education now is not about the policy itself. It's about challenges that it throws up regularly when schools open, and admissions time and food issues. So they want the issues to be resolved. But once it's coming up again, it becomes an election issue. And also the time we did the polling in December, that was the time that the schools have just opened and parents were struggling and screaming here and there. So you expect the polling numbers to pick those signals. But over time, it will settle down and you see where the numbers actually lie. But the problem is that I think they feel that the government must do more to solve those issues with regards to education. But for now, I think the outlook remains John Mahama's to lose the election. He's leading comfortably, because Alan has succeeded to increase the gulf between Mahama and Bawumia. If Alan wasn't in the race, you would expect the race to be a bit tighter than it is now. But Alan is taking a chunk of that vote, and that has really drained oxygen out of Bawumia so far in the polls at this stage. Now, we expect the new entrants into the race to have an impact, but there's no room for them that much. Those who said they were undecided or someone else, the number is very small, less than I think 4%. So anybody who enters the race, either you go into that column and pick someone else, or you look at other candidates that you can grab from and you do so. And I think, without mincing my words, those numbers are at the moment coming from MPP. MPP is the one struggling from entrance of candidates, Alan and co. And we expect Nana Bediako to be a drain on MPP. Understand, he's from Asukwa, Ashanti region, Asukwa boy. And he presents himself as, Ashtown boy. And so it's a problem for MPP. They have to have a strategy to deal with these issues going forward. But for now, Mahama is leading in the polls. And for anything to change significantly, the economy must change significantly. The job situation must improve significantly. Perception about corruption must improve. Then we have educational challenges should improve. And also the year of road, I don't know whether it will be this year to be year of roads. If they're able to do a lot of roads, it could help. But the problem for some of them is that if you embark on roads massively at this stage, people will see it as election bribes, and that could backfire. And I think the roads should have been started last year. If you leave it too late, Ghanaians have gone to a point where they've now become smarter. If you try that, believe me, it will backfire. And for those who want to use money as well in the coming election, they have to be very, very careful. Because the environment is very toxic for people who show opulence. And if anything, we should remember Sinov. So, on this note, I think I will pause here and then wait for some questions from the floor if you have them. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, that was Musa Danko, Executive Director of Global Info Analytics, and it's obvious that quite some work has gone into the things that he tells us. But it's time to raise the questions. Instead of 25 minutes, he did almost 45 minutes, and we have very, very little time. So those who have short comments and questions to ask, please raise your hand so we can see you. Please not more than 2 minutes each, otherwise we are in trouble. So you, and you. I think it's about 5 hands or so. So starting from you, short, very, very short. Brief. Please come to the mic.
Good evening, comrades and friends, and then welcome to New Year. My question to him is about the pools you did in Medina. You did it in July, then you came back in August, and you saw that you said there was problem with the MP there. I want to find out whether he has come up or he's still down, because the independent candidate is also there, who is also coming from NDC. So there's a problem in Medina about whether Susu will make it, because he has not been seen in the constituency for a very long time, and that's what people are worried about, what he should what is happening. So I want to know whether Susu is still in the race or he has come down. Thank you.
Good evening, comrades. Well, Mr. Dankwa, thank you very much. I've learned a lot. Mine is just a short comment. Coming up in this general election, I think that what happened in the previous election shouldn't happen. 8 people lost their life. And going forward, I hope you're going to have a peaceful election for the better. Thank you very much.
Good evening, comrades. My question is, what future do we have as young men and women when we have politicians who buy votes, politicians who believe in superstition? What hope do we have?
Good evening, Mr. Dankwa. I have a small point I have to make. Your analysis is accurate. It's 100% accurate, because if the rural government, the cabinet ministers, and the CEOs, if they are losing the parliamentary election, it means that the government is in hot waters. So I strongly believe that your analysis is 100% accurate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Musa. I have 2 short questions. The first one is that in the most likely event, most likely because this is Ghana, that Afofonto is disqualified and that Shada is also frustrated out of the race, do you foresee them teaming up, or do you foresee a lot of people that are following them voting for the NDC rather than the MPP? The other thing I want to know is, you say if all things be equal, which is not going to be equal, because things are just going to get worse. And if things get worse between now and June, July, do you expect higher numbers for John Mahama?
I try to limit my comments on Medina because that's where I come from, and that's the reason why I was even attacked very well. We don't speculate when it comes to our work. At the time we did the poll, he was behind. We haven't been back to know what is happening. We cannot say whether he is recovered or still behind. So the poll numbers were as it was at the time. We don't have current data. And we have no intention to go back there and do the same thing. Otherwise, we may be accused of having an agenda there. Unless our poll, maybe our random selection picks that Medina constituency again and we'll go back because the system says we should go there. But we'll not go there purposely to go and do another poll like we did last time. Secondly, on what future the young people have in this country when people are buying vote. Look, at a point, it must stop. And I think we must find a way of stopping it. And there must be a will from both political parties, the major parties. I think the only way we can do that is to broaden the electoral college who elects the MPs for the primaries. My proposal is that everybody who says an MPP or NDC must be allowed to register, pay dues, and vote in the primaries. If you have 10,000, 5,000 people voting in your constituency. Go and bribe them, let's see. I think that's the only way, that's the simplest way to kill that money. But if you have a small clique of 500 people, come on, they can be bought. So that, I think we should think as a country. I mean, if it means using electoral laws to push that agenda, I think we should do that. Otherwise, people will buy their seat. You don't know where they got their money from. There could be so many sources of funding that could end up people in parliament. And then they could blackmail us as a country using whatever they have about those MPs. So let's be very careful. Let's not push this thing too far. And then you mentioned about disqualification of Afro-Franco and Cheddar. Look, I don't think they would disqualify Afro-Franco. Cheddar, maybe his tax issues could come and haunt him. But one thing the government must not do, I mean, if you are a psychologist, I mean, you know how people behave. If people are seeing that you are targeting certain people deliberately, frustrating them, don't think they will come and vote for you on the day. It's logical. If they push Cheddar out, I think the only option that his followers will have is to vote other candidates, not MPP. If they frustrate Alan Cash, it will be even worse for MPP. And my advice from polling numbers is that, and from little I know about people behavior in elections, let people decide their fate. Don't let the system weed them out. The economy, I wouldn't say, look, let's be optimistic first and foremost about this country. Let's hope things get better. We can't get worse because the pressure on everybody is huge. You know, when things get worse, remember how many phone calls we get for small kobo. It's not easy. Let's hope that this country makes progress. We are turning a corner gradually in the macroeconomic aspect, and let's hope that we are able to take that course. Because look, if things get worse, if your government comes forward, it's going to suffer. So don't wish. But I think what we have to understand is that this election, this election is almost cast. Because over 70% of voters we spoke to, 70% say that they have made up their mind on who they intend to vote for. If they are voting for Alan, they are made up. If they are voting for Baumia, they have. If they are voting for Mahama, they have made up their mind. Then you have a small number of about a third who you can convince, or who, when things change, they could move here and there. But believe me, I think they haven't got enough time to turn things around electorally. I mean, probably things have been left too late. And also, we have to understand that other things will play a role in this election other than the key issues that I've mentioned. And I've said it again, sometimes people think that it's not comfortable to say it, but I have to, because from polling perspective, I don't have emotions when it comes to the data. I don't have feelings for the data, just the data. Last year, religion, when we asked voters whether religion will play a role in their decisions as to who they vote for, 8% said yes, it will play a role. Last year, around, I think, July or thereabout. Right now, that figure is 26%. So it's not for me to say that, oh, it will play a role. The data says that it will play a role. So, like it or not, it will play a role. Who will that disadvantage? The maths can tell you who will be disadvantaged. It's not for me to polish it in a way that will make somebody feel comfortable. It's the facts, the data. Now, if you look at the Muslims, they are the least demography who are less likely to vote based on religion. Yeah, Muslims said religion is not what they will look out for when they are voting. Most of them. But when you compare that to the Christians, it's a different story. More Christians are saying that religion will play a bigger role in their choice than Muslims. That is a fact. So up to the Peace Council or Christian Council, whatever, religious groups, whatever it is, what are we going to do? What is NCCE going to do? How now we haven't gotten to a stage where this country is not going to take religion and ethnicity in their voting intention. We are not there yet. But it means we must make effort to make sure that we don't make it a center of the issues, and that we vote for people because we know they are competent, we know they can deliver, and not because they are Muslims or Christians. Thank you very much.
I really would have wished that our guest stuck to electoral statistics. Because there's one statement he made which is completely incorrect. This statement that as far as the economic management is concerned, we are turning the corner, can never be true. You know, if you look at the figures, inflation and so on, inflation appears to be coming down and so on. But look, what's the cost? For some time now, we are not paying our debts. You know, we are not paying our debts. We have unilaterally decided not to pay our debts. So what is happening is that we are postponing the problem. If we start paying our debts, all the figures will jigger. You know. So it's in a way, it's some kind of deception, you know. And they are flaunting these figures around, and they are telling us that we are turning the corner. What corner? What corner? In any case, if you go to the market, prices haven't come down. Petroleum prices haven't come down, food prices haven't come down, and so on. So, my brother, I beg you, don't believe that thing about turning the corner. There's no corner to turn, you know. We have very little time, and I suspect that we're going to give Abdul Haq 4 minutes to just go through our social media platforms. Just 4 or 5 minutes to go through our social media platforms. Abdul Haq.
Thank you. And today we are getting a lot of reactions, and messages are coming in from all over the place. But I'll take a few from Facebook and then mix it with a few also from WhatsApp. I think the first one comes in from, okay, it simply says, hello, good evening. This 2024 election is not going to be easy. Looking at MPP parliamentary, they want to break the 8, but this election is telling Baumia that they can't Seidu from Bupi. Okay, this election is telling Baumia that they cannot break the 8. Seidu from Bupi. Thank you for your message. This says, good evening, comrades. Good evening to you too. In as much as Global Info Analyst result portray loss of people voting for the NDC, there is a need for us to pay more attention to the EC, ensuring that the system the EC puts in place will not lead to rigging of votes. That is from Charles Dakura from Tamale. Charles Dakura from Tamale. Thank you for the message. This simply says, I want to ask if the man have nothing. Sorry, I want to ask if the man have anything from Hohoi concerning the MPs and the presidential. I'm Daniel from Ketu North. Daniel from Ketu North. Let me take a few of our text messages. This is coming in saying, good evening, I'm Noah from Aikuma, AY City. Okay. Thank you, Noah, for watching us. Okay, these people are saying more hellos. Let me take the Facebook messages. This is coming from Trissa Boateng, and she says, Ghanaians are tired of the abysmal performance of our leaders. It's time for fundamental change in the livelihood of the people. The hunger issues are prevalent. Thank you for that message. This is also coming from Andy Boss, and he simply says, the arrogance and opulence of power under MPP is undesirable. Undesirable. Corruption is here. We need NDC to fight it. That is from Andy Boss. Thank you, Andy Boss. Obed Selam simply says, Dumso has brought me here. Dumso has brought you here, but you are not telling us what you want to send across again. Also coming again, it says, like joke, the Electoral Commission is taking Ghanaians for a ride. Example, sell the game played by the EC can only be described as a clear signal of rigging in the upcoming general elections. The antagonistic posture of the rigged leaders of the EC, Bossman and Jean, doesn't give confidence in the electoral system. This is a strong warning sign for the opposition parties. They should work together and challenge the manipulative mind of the EC. The NDC, as a major player, must lead the way. Remember, this time, no time. It says, remember, this time, no time. That's from Andy Boss. Thank you for the message. Nuruddin Haruna also says, this is the kind of program I like so much, particularly the one done by info analysts or info analytics. Keep it up. Nuruddin from Wale. Thank you, Nuruddin from Wale. Feruza Saba simply says, I'm watching you live from Osu. Thank you for watching us live from Osu. I hope you are enjoying the show also. And Rafik also says, there's no doubt that Ghanaians are not going to give the MPP another chance. Ghanaians are not going to give the MPP another chance to rule this country. My worry is the EC. Based on their conduct over the years during general elections, I am tempted to believe that the upcoming general elections may be rigged in favor of the MPP. That is coming from Rafik Tins from Tamale. Thank you, Rafik Tins from Tamale. I think I'll stop here and then we'll wrap the research.
Well, for all of you watching us and participating in this program, this is all time would allow us to do. Please keep your dial on Pan-African Television because we bring you the best in everything all the time. See you all again next week. Bye-bye.